It is my privilege and joy that we can continue our Bible study about the promise. And we have today the subtitle Covenant Primer. Now we want to study that a covenant is always a promise, and a promise is always a covenant. And we find this in our first or second chapter at the command that God gives to Adam and Eve. And he says, "And the Lord God commanded the man, saying, Of every tree of the garden thou mayest freely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil thou shalt not eat of it. For in the day that thou shalt eat thereof, thou shalt surely die." That is a promise and a covenant. And we have seen that this command, this promise, this covenant had in it conditions. And if man would have been not deceived, they would have never eaten from the wrong tree. Some people say that the wrong tree or the tree was put there to give man a choice. That is, did God want man or give the man a choice to sin? If he would do that, he would be the creator of sin. But it's exactly the opposite. That tree and everything that happens after mankind fall apart from God is a proof that there is no alternative and never was and never exists for God. There is no such thing. God can never give a choice to everyone else to let go of him. Then he would have created sin. But it's the opposite that is proven through all that what we have seen and experienced in this life already. So God had prepared a way back. And this way back has a finish line. It comes to an end when the promise will be fulfilled. And we know the promise is from the separation from God, we come back to the reunion with God. We enter into the real rest of a Sabbath. We enter the eternal life. We enter a new home. We enter a home free of every injustice, fear, sickness, or suffering. And above all things, no one will teach their neighbor. They will all be taught by God. And the only way to come to this promise is by faith. So, since Adam fell, God has given promises or covenants that brought us along this way back to Him. This is where we are today, almost at the finish line. Yes, we are the privileged generation that will see the promise fulfilled. We will experience in life the coming of Jesus. We will be that generation. Those privileged. Yes, we have to go through difficult times. But if our eyes would be open to see the glory that is waiting upon us, we would be happy with everything we now encounter as a difficulty. What a privilege to be the last generation, to be the ones that will see all the death from Adam arise and be cut together and brought up in the clouds. What a privilege we have to be in these last days the representative of a God of love who will be able to rescue as many as possible to Him back. So, why are promises covenants? You might have been surprised that I said a promise is a covenant and a covenant is a promise. Because there is no promise and there is no covenant that are not subject to conditions. And if something is subject to conditions, it always requires multiple parties. So that's why a promise is given to someone. A covenant is also made with someone. And that's why I ask myself, can you do a covenant with yourself? And I took Daniel, because it looks like Daniel, when he was brought to the Babylonian king, he purposed in his heart. And it looks like he made a promise, a covenant with himself. When you purpose something in your heart, did he do that with himself? Was it his command to not eat the unclean food? But unclean was not necessarily the meat. It was because it was not cut, it was not slain according to God's prescription. Because God said there should be no blood in the animal when you eat the flesh. Because the blood is life. And life is not that you can have control over it. That's why life, blood, should not be in the flesh you eat. But on the king's tables, they did not have these rules. So they ate the flesh with the blood. And they were also sacrificed to the idols. So Daniel was not a vegetarian because he ate meat. He ate the Paschal lamb, and there was no idea back then of vegetarianism. But since he could not eat the meat, that which was prepared by flesh foods, he chose to do just the vegetables that are added usually and the salads on that plate. You see, before vegetarianism came, when I went, and I was a vegetarian a long time ago, and I went to a restaurant and they didn't have a vegetarian meal. So they just gave me the additions that you put there on the plate, and they took just the meat away. So that was funny, because usually people want the meat and the additions, they just eat a little bit of it. But I now had just the vegetables around that meat. So here they chose to not become unclean. But who gave the law? It was God. So Daniel purposed in his heart, and he found favor before God and before that man that was in charge of him and his 3 friends. I was the same age, 18 years old, when I was called to the army. And I purposed in my heart when I entered there that I will not break the Sabbath. That is, I will not do on the Sabbath day anything that is required for me to do that they usually do on each day of the week. My meal, my food was reserved because I got it from outside through relatives. They brought it to me. So I was not in danger to be confronted with the unclean meat, because I had people who brought me that. God provided that. But how could anyone provide me for the Sabbath? But I purposed in my heart, and God gave me favor. And I had a man who helped me, who was in the leading position. And whenever there was a danger that I should go out on the Sabbath day to work with the other ones, I could be made free. That was the most shortest Sabbath I ever lived, because I was so glad to be having one day of the week free from being under another's commands. So can someone make, even if he purposes in his heart, a covenant with himself? Of course not. Not even God can do that, because the law of God does not permit it. And the law of God is the essence of his being. So God is love because he does nothing for himself. And he created the whole universe. Everything that he made cannot do anything for itself or himself. But God is the source of all things. He does everything out of himself. He is the source of all things and all powers. The universe has no power. He needs God as a source. So nothing can exist or function by itself. So here we understand that God is in a covenant relationship with His whole creation. Because nothing can exist or function without Him. So when He creates it, He binds Himself to that what He created to sustain it in function. If He would just 1 second remove His sustaining power, that element would not exist anymore. So God is in a covenant relationship with His whole universe. He is the guarantee for His creatures. But God went even further in His creation, that He created angels and humans, and maybe other beings we will see, that have reason and morality. He created them in His image and placed them in a covenant relationship of responsibility to Him. So this covenant, of course, God made. He had the idea to give to those who have reason and morality the privilege of being responsible for what they do and not do. This is how He created us as humans in His image. He has the ability to be responsible because everything depends on Him. But now He shares that with us. He gives us the ability to also be responsible for what we do or not. And this is a very important point I want to emphasize here. When we look up today in the human world around us, this is missing, that a person takes over responsibility for what he or she does. Why do they not take responsibility? Because we are born with that deception that led Adam to say, it was Eve that brought me in this situation. And Eve said it was the serpent, and the serpent said it was God. So no one wants to take responsibility for what he does or not. And today this got at the highest peak, I could say. Because now the danger comes from outside. So science is the head of everything. It's the new religion. And it has a God that is this nanoparticle with spikes. And the governments must surrender because they have no idea about it. So they must give the responsibility to science. But the government cannot keep its people under control. So it gives the control to the people and says, oh, you must put your clients to do what we say they have to do. But I just want to take the church because that's closer to us. So the church leaders get the command from the government. They say, oh, the government says this, so okay, we obey. But they cannot control the church. So they give that control to the pastors. And the pastor says, okay, I cannot control my church. I give it to my church leader. The church leader says, well, I cannot control this. I give it to the diacons, and so on. That's a cascade of power. It's amazing. Everyone who is in this step never takes responsibility for what he does or not. Because he says, I'm a deacon, so I must follow the church leader's command. The church leader says, I don't take responsibility because it's the pastor who has told that to me. The pastor doesn't take the responsibility because he says, the church leaders have given me this. The church leaders don't take the responsibility because they say, it's the government. So it's a never-ending circle, a vice circle. No one takes responsibility today, what he does or not. That's the greatest disaster. That shows that the creature that God once created with reason and morality has lost it. If you cannot stay for what you do or not, in full responsibility for God, to God, and independent of what others tell you or not, then you lost it. Then you cannot be called a representative of God, because God takes responsibility for what he does. And he gave us also the same privilege to be responsible for what we do or not do. Not believe blindly what is not true. So, I'm repeating this again and again. God's creation holds two different elements, the physical and the spiritual. The physical element cannot govern itself. It is always governed from outside because it has only a reaction. The spirit is always governing himself only from inside out. That's why he can act and react, and he can even not react, which the physical element has no way to not do that. So that's why understanding the spiritual function is crucial for us to understand and be able to fulfill the work that God has given to us in order to reach the finish line of this world's history. So the Spirit has an entrance and an exit, and he is determined by his spiritual need. And that he can only take from outside, but he must act from inside out to go and take it. That's I made these arrows that we might see how he does it. So from inside, he goes outside through faith, picks up the information and brings it in. From inside, he goes outside to trust the person that gives him the information. In order then, what he took in, he must do. After taking it, the will decides what to do with it. Everything a human believes, he must do. Everyone who he trusts, and that person tells him something, he must believe that and must do it. I just chat on the phone with text messages with a very dear loved person to my heart. And she wrote to me and said, I have more proof for this nanoparticle with spikes than you for God. And I was thinking in my heart, now, do you need any proofs for a physical thing? I mean, a physical thing, you can see it, or you can make it visible, or so that you can see it's physical. You don't need faith for the tablet, or for this as a book, as the Bible. You don't need for that faith. You see, to acknowledge things does not need or does not meet the needs of the Spirit. The Spirit needs spiritual information that he can pick out of here or from the tablet, but he lives from that what gives him understanding, that what gives him security, love, justice. That's what he lives from. So today we made to have faith in a physical thing. That's nonsense. So if you have to believe in a physical thing, then something is wrong. Because a physical thing is proven by its existence. You must detect it with some instrument. Might be not always be visible, but it can be detected, it can be measured. But if it's something that you have to believe in and it's on physical level, then the distortion is perfect. And this is exactly what we live today. That's why it's the final battle, it's the final deception of the devil. To make you believe in a physical thing as being a spiritual element. That's exactly idolatry. You see, you had to bow down in front of a physical thing believing it has spiritual abilities. That's impossible. But exactly this is what we experience in our world today. One of my relatives, also a physician, got his shot. And he got side effects, fever and shakings. But he says this is good because it shows that the body reacts. Now it's amazing how twisted our minds are. I take a hammer and I give a hit to this tablet and it breaks. And I say, wow, it is broken. It proves the hammer is good. Friends, did we lose our minds? Whatever makes your body shaken, whatever makes your body fever, is wrong. It must, through fever, through the shaking, the body wants to get rid of that element that is wrong. You cannot say what breaks the tablet is good for the tablet. But this is how we think. Oh, the worse the side effect, the better the medication. Wow. I'm amazed. These are the physicians. These are the smart guys of the world. We are living in the greatest deception. But how can this deception only happen? The only way we can be deceived or sin, doing wrong things, is self-deception. Since the Spirit governs himself from inside out, there is never a possibility to be deceived from outside. So it happens, it started in Lucifer himself. Now Lucifer comes to Eve in the serpent, but if Eve would have not deceived herself, she could not be deceived. Jesus is the proof that it's only possible when you deceive yourself to take in the lie of the other one. It's not possible. No one can deceive you if you don't deceive yourself first. So that's why all the issues that we have are inside, not outside. But now you see the whole world says disease comes from outside. This is impossible. The Bible says, keep thy heart with all diligence, because out of it are the issues of life. And Jesus says in Mark 7, when they got angry because he didn't wash his hands, and today, not washing your hands, you're a criminal. And they would have killed probably Jesus also, because they said to him, why does he not wash his hands? And look to his answer from verse 20, Mark 7. And he said, that which comes out of the man, that defiles the man. For from within, out of the heart of man, proceed evil thoughts, adulteries, fornications, murders, thefts, covetousness, wickedness, deceit, lasciviousness, an evil eye, blasphemies, pride, foolishness. They all come from inside. All these evil things come from within and defile the man. Not dirt. Nothing external can defile a man. Because our Creator said it. Because if physical things cannot be defiled, they are physical. It's only inside us, in the spirit, in the heart, all evil or all good comes out. So if we never would deceive ourselves, we could never do wrong or sin. So the only source for a spirit with reason and morals is God. That's why this is the everlasting covenant. We must have His words, to trust His words, to do the right. So that's why He created man to be in a covenant relationship with Him. And He gave him the same responsibility that God has, but partially to a certain area. So He created our solar system and He put man to govern it, to take the power from God and use it on this earth. So if everything is working in a circuit, man was made to be that connects our solar system, our earth, to God. So that's the highest responsibility God could give to man, because he put everything that was in the circle where man was head of it, like the heart is the head of our circuit system. So man was the heart of all that what would happen on our earth and our solar system. That gave him responsibility. Did God make himself depend on him? No, but he made the creation of everything he did in these 6 days, he did and made dependent on man. So that's why he brought him into a covenant relationship, and we will see that later in the next presentations more in depth. So here is the creation of man. The purpose was serving as king and administrator. The content was the multiplication, the gardening, the naming of the animals. Everything was in his hands. And he had a sign of the covenant that was the Sabbath. Unfortunately, man separated. He broke that covenant relationship. He changed in himself and became self-deceived. Now can he no longer carry out the job. The earth gets into the chaos, and we are at the end where the climax of the chaos is seen. And if God would have not had a way back, everyone would have been dead and the world would not exist anymore. But God has a way back, and he put those promises along this way until today. He gave to Noah and his descendants a promise: no destruction of the earth by water. All souls on earth will not be killed by a flood. And he gave a sign, the rainbow. He took a covenant with Abraham, and he should be a blessing to all people in multiplication and spreading over all the earth, this blessing. And he had a covenant sign, the circumcision. God called his people Israel into a new covenant to be back serving as king and administrators, now having the law written in their heart, never to come again into any self-deception possible. And the sign is the Sabbath, and the expression that out of the children of God comes out his love. That's a sign that will be seen. He who keeps the Sabbath is also loving like God loves. So the eternal promise and covenant of God with man, from Adam's fall, the way back to the promise, the way back to the reunion with God. And all this way back is put with many promises. And we, as the last generation, are the one that will fulfill the promise. We will be the light of the earth. Every covenant that God made will have its fulfillment in this one covenant by his people representing him. What a privilege. Let us be faithful. Let us understand the time in which we live and do our job so that Jesus may come and finish this race, this restoration of mankind. Amen.